Well, this is Eric, and as promised, I'm going to do a screencast to give you an overview of the problem of free will. And just keep in mind that this does not cover every part of the chapter. This is really supposed to be an overview, a study guide, and my aim is that you will go back, read the text again, really think about it, so when you come to class on Wednesday, we can have a good discussion about the things either in this screencast or things from the book. And please do keep in mind that everything I'm going to talk about here is trying to point you toward a successful completion of the group project we have coming up. I will go quickly so I can finish this in 15 minutes and upload it to YouTube. So you may want to watch this again and or pause it along the way to think about things as I go, because I'm not going to stop to give us as much time as I would do in class. So what's Rex here saying? Atoms and particles behave in probabilistic ways, but our mind is made of atoms and particles, so how can free will exist? And this is a problem because most of us think we have free will. Our book, Palmer starts talking about the law of universal causation, and he quotes this pre-Socratic philosopher named Leucippus, if I pronounce that correctly, and he said, "Naught happens for nothing, but everything from a ground of necessity." Again, the ancient Greeks really had thought of everything in philosophy, or almost everything. They were ancient Greeks who were determinists. My translation of this quote is something like this: everything happens for a reason, and this reason is grounded in the universal law of cause and effect. This is my summary. And even those of us who aren't physicists, I think we generally get a sense of what cause and effect is. Things happen for a reason, and if we're talking about physical matter moves when other physical matter bumps into it. So we've used the example of a pool table and pool balls. Think about it. Everything happens based on the laws of cause and effect of things running and bumping into each other and moving on trajectories based on the laws of physics. So again, Rex asks, if we human beings are material entities, then how can we have free will, since things that are limited by the laws of cause and effect normally are not things that we think of as having free will? This cartoonist says, "I wanted to draw a comic about free will, but I decided not to." And we can use this to get a general sense of what we think we mean when we say free will. So here's the cartoonist sitting here ready to draw a cartoon, and what I have down here are just kind of my ideas of the things that have happened before this moment in time. So we've got this guy's DNA, everything that's in his genetic history, his predispositions, his IQ, and all of those things. We've got all of his past experiences here and everything else that's happened in the past. So he's wondering, what should I draw? And he's thinking, I could draw this cartoon about Zeno's paradox, or I could draw this cartoon about free will, and, what am I going to do? And I think most of us are libertarians, and again, this word comes from the word liberty, freedom. So the libertarian is the philosopher who thinks we do have free will, and free will really means that we have authentic choices. When we think about our past, we think about influences. Again, most of us are probably comfortable thinking that things that have happened to us in the past, including our genetic heritage, our childhood experiences, how we woke up this morning, all the things that have happened influence what happens in the future. Things that have happened may lean us one way or the other. They may influence us. They may guide us into our future. But most of us think we really have control over our future. We can't change the past, but we do have authentic choices about the future. And I can go one way and draw this cartoon, or I could go this way and draw this cartoon. The future is not written, it's not determined. The determinist thinks that, of course, we have the illusion of an authentic choice. Determinists don't argue that we don't feel like we have free will. Of course we do. But they're going to say it is an illusion. Instead of talking about prior influences, they're going to talk about prior causes. Everything that's happened to us in the past has led us to where we are today. And while we think we have authentic choices about what to do in the future, one of them is not really a possible future, and one of them is. This illusion that we have choices about what to do in the future is very pervasive, but we really only have a necessary future. So free will says we really do have a free choice. this really means the same prior causes or influences could lead to a different outcome. Instead of going one way, these prior influences could be another way, and I'm going to make that determination based on my choice about the future. Again, I think that's, in a nutshell, what most of us think about free will, and this is the view of libertarianism. Movies and science fiction often really good ways to get a handle on some of these complicated philosophical concepts. I'm going to go through these quickly. We can come back and talk about these on Wednesday. You might have seen the movie Groundhog Day, one of my favorite movies. It's this movie about this weather reporter named Phil Connors who lives through Groundhog Day, wakes up the next morning only to find that it's Groundhog Day again. So he relives the same day over and over and over, hundreds or thousands of times. So the movie's really interesting because, of course, Phil Connors is the only character in the movie who can do anything different. He wakes up every day, he realizes it's the same day again, and so he can make different choices. But everyone else that he meets is unaware that they've lived this day before, and so they do exactly what they did in the past instances. The only time they do anything different is when he does something different to impact them, which leads them on a different trajectory. But think about it. If we have free will, and if our past does not determine our future, then why do the characters in the movie, other than Phil Connors, always do the same thing? I think the writers of this movie believe that we are determined. Another one of my favorite time travel movies is Back to the Future, and one of the most remarkable things that I think about is what would happen if you went into the past and you took a sports almanac that told you all the winners of every boxing match, every football game, every baseball game? How rich could you get knowing who was going to win all of these events? So if you could go back in time with a sports almanac, could you get rich from betting on winning teams? If you're a determinist, you're going to say absolutely you could get rich because the same past is always going to lead to the same future. Those baseball players and football players and boxers are going to make exactly the same choices that they made every time. And so the future is going to turn out the same way it did the first time. And if you somehow got a sports almanac from the future and brought it into the past, you would be the only one who could act on that future knowledge because you had the sports almanac. Everybody else would be doing the same things they had always done. So as long as you were very careful not to impact anyone else in a substantial way, you could be sure that what happened the last time would happen this time. But if we really have authentic free will, the sports almanac would not be a reliable guide to getting rich for the time traveler. Why? Because the libertarian, the believer in free will, thinks that the same past equals a different future. I've never seen a science fiction movie based on this libertarian idea of free will, because if we did see such a movie, the person who went into the past might experience something completely different because the people might make different choices than they did the first time. Think about these two examples because I think if you can understand these examples, it'll really help you think about free will versus determinism. A little bit about determinism specifically. Determinists believe that all matter and energy is subject to the law of cause and effect, which is basically the modern scientific understanding of the universe. Our bodies, including our brains and minds, if we have minds, of course, the determinist is a materialist and thinks that minds are just, some kind of organic cogs and gears and whatnot. Our brains and minds, our bodies and brains are made of matter and energy, and so therefore everything our bodies and brains do is subject to the law of cause and effect, and so everything we do is the necessary effect of prior causes. In other words, our past determines our future. Note the connection between a materialist view of metaphysics and the view that humans do not have free will. Right? It's the materialist who thinks that we don't have if we have a mind, it's really just an aspect of the brain. So there is a real strong connection between materialism and determinism. The book talks about B.F. Skinner, a psychologist who was a behaviorist and also a determinist. A lot of these views of determinism, again, are really related to the metaphysical idea of behaviorism. Skinner thought human beings are really just complicated animals, and just like the behavior of animals is purely mechanical, so is the behavior of humans. Sigmund Freud was also a determinist. He's the guy who thought our personalities are generated when we're young children, and then this personality, including a lot of unconscious personality, affects how we act as adults. And most of the things we do are drawn directly from these motivations from when we were children. And so again, if so, we are not free because our actions are caused by things that happen to us as children. Again, Freud would have said we're unaware of these motivations, but they're there and they're determined, and we do not have free will. Let's take a minute to stop and think about theory versus practice. In theory, everything about the weather is determined and predictable, right? Weather is made of stuff. It's made of air molecules and water molecules and molecules moving faster or slower and various other things, air pressure. So in theory, this is all predictable stuff. We should be able to, if we understand what happened yesterday with the weather, we should be able to predict what's going to happen tomorrow with the weather. But the fact that we can't, in practice, predict the weather perfectly does not mean that raindrops have free will. It just means that weather is so complicated that we, at least at the present, cannot adequately account for the future based on the past. But think about it. If we could understand the motions of every molecule on Earth, we could predict the future. We could predict where the hurricane was going to go. We could predict where the lightning was going to strike. We could predict where every raindrop was going to fall in every pond and where every ripple was going to ripple out to. Now, we can't do that, but it's not because things aren't predictable. It's just that we don't have the knowledge to do that. We could take another look at a movie. If you're a fan of The Princess Bride, you might remember this scene where the evil genius is trying to kill the hero by using his deterministic intellect. So the evil genius offers the hero some poison. He says, "Here, put this poison in one of the two glasses. I will turn away." He turns back and says, "I'm so smart that I can predict, based on what I know about you, which of these glasses you poisoned." And of course, this is a comedy, so he goes back and forth, predicting which glass the poison was in, drinks one and dies because he doesn't realize that the hero has poisoned both drinks because he was immune to the poison. Again, this is based on the idea that we can predict someone's future actions if we could know everything about their past. And what's interesting about this example from The Princess Bride is this does not disprove determinism. All it means is the evil genius, unfortunately, did not have sufficient knowledge about the hero's past. If he would have known that the hero was immune to the poison, he would have probably predicted that he would have poisoned both drinks, and then he would have been able to move forward. I'm going to end and pick up the screencast in just a minute with this cartoon. He thinks he's proving free will exists because he smacks his friend in the head for no good reason. The friend, of course, says, "Well, you might not have had a good reason, but you had some reason for doing it." So he smacks him again. "Well, that was just mean." Does this cartoon disprove determinism, or does it only mean that if the friend would have recognized how mean the person with the bat was, he would have not only predicted one thing, but also the other? I'm going to close out of this screencast, pick up for a second screencast, and finish up in another few minutes.